It's pretty incredible, isn't it? Just the sheer amount of information flying around online, it can feel totally overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to sort out what's actually important, what's really relevant for you,
Mm.
it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're here. We've gone through the sources you shared with us and picked out 3 things we think really need a closer look, specifically for you.
Exactly. We're not just doing headlines today. We're really digging into, first, this new law about non-consensual explicit images.
Right?
Then there's this pretty concerning malware that's hitting Macs.
Okay.
And finally, the whole complex situation with Qatar potentially gifting an aircraft that might become Air Force One.
So yeah, get ready to go a bit deeper than the usual news summary. We're going to unpack the key details, look at what it all means, and hopefully give you a much clearer picture.
Sounds good.
Keeping your systems safe is super important as businesses rely more and more on digital systems, and that's where Turnkey Cybersecurity can really help.
Yeah, we're here to help small businesses just like yours make sure they're safe and sound in this crazy world of cybersecurity. And we offer a whole suite of services specifically tailored for you. So that's ensuring CMMC compliance and doing penetration testing. We also run vulnerability scans, and we can help you develop a comprehensive risk assessment.
And it doesn't stop there, right?
No, it doesn't.
We handle incident response, should the unfortunate happen, and we guide you through migrations like GCC. We just want to make sure your transitions are smooth and that you're secure.
It's all about peace of mind, right? You focus on what you do best, running your business, and we'll make sure that your digital world is safe and sound.
Okay, let's jump right in. First up, the Take It Down Act. On the surface, it sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Basically, its main goal is to ban putting explicit images and videos online if the person in them didn't consent.
And that includes deepfakes, too.
Yeah.
The generated stuff.
Yes, exactly. Both real photos and videos, and those digitally created or manipulated ones. What's interesting is the strong bipartisan support it got.
Right.
It seems like there's agreement across the board that this kind of online abuse needs addressing, and the First Lady was quite involved in pushing for it.
Which really shows how serious this is. I mean, the source material we looked at mentioned the terrible impact this has on victims, even tragically, suicides. So the goal seems, well, undeniably good.
Absolutely. And the law says websites have to remove this content within 48 hours after a victim asks them to.
48 hours, okay.
And they also have to try and get rid of copies that might have spread elsewhere.
That sounds like a big job for these online platforms.
Right.
But, this brings up something else. From the sources, the potential for this law to be, well, misused. Didn't we see something earlier about the president saying he might use it himself because of how he felt he was treated online?
Yeah, that was mentioned. And it definitely raises that critical question about balance. The law is meant to protect people from really harmful stuff, non-consensual stuff.
Sure.
But online speech is so vast, there's always a risk that these kinds of rules could be stretched, used in ways maybe not originally intended. It's that classic digital age tension, isn't it? Protecting people versus free expression.
It really is a tough line to walk.
No easy answers there.
So when they say explicit images, what exactly does that mean under this law? It's not just any photo, presumably.
No. It actually points to a definition that's already in law, Section 1309 of that Consolidated Appropriations Act from 2022.
Okay, so what does that say?
It's pretty specific. It covers things like showing someone's uncovered genitals, pubic area, anus, or a post-pubescent female nipple. Also showing sexual fluids or people involved in sexually explicit conduct. And interestingly, it even covers stuff taken in public if the person didn't sort of voluntarily display it or agree to the sexual conduct.
That is very detailed, but, it still feels like there could be tricky situations applying it.
Yeah.
And our sources did talk about some real practical problems with actually making this work.
Yeah.
Like, how do these websites really know for sure that the person asking for the takedown is the person in the picture?
That's a huge one. There isn't really a perfect system for online providers to verify identities like that.
Yeah.
And figuring out if the image was shared with consent originally, that can be incredibly tough, especially if it was a while ago or in a specific context.
Yeah.
The source brought up the example of the First Lady's past work as a lingerie model. There are intimate images online, presumably with her consent because it was paid work. Telling those apart from genuinely non-consensual stuff, that's a real challenge for these platforms.
Yeah, I can see that. It makes you wonder if, just to cover themselves legally, these companies might just take down almost anything that gets flagged, even if it was consensual originally.
That's a very real possibility.
our source compared to how copyright stuff often works online.
Exactly. Like with DMCA takedown notices. Platforms might just decide it's safer and cheaper to comply broadly with takedown requests to avoid fines or legal trouble,
Right.
even if that means some legitimate content gets caught in the net, which could definitely cause its own problems if the law gets applied too broadly.
And then there's the whole global internet thing. What happens if these pictures or videos are hosted on servers outside the U.S.? Does this law have any teeth then?
That's a major limitation. U.S. law generally stops at the border, right? Getting websites in other countries to follow U.S. rules, especially if their own laws are different, that's going to be really hard, maybe impossible sometimes.
So it feels like, okay, the Take It Down Act has a really important goal protecting people from harm, including those awful deepfakes. But there are some pretty big question marks about how well it will work in practice, potential for misuse, and enforcement challenges,
Yeah.
especially with the FPC possibly being the main enforcer mentioned.
Precisely. Good intentions, but the real-world effectiveness. We'll have to see. Which actually kind of leads us to our next topic, shifting gears to a different kind of online threat malware aimed at Macs.
Okay, yeah. Now, this is something you don't hear about quite as much, right? People tend to think Macs are pretty safe.
That's the common perception, yeah.
But researchers found this new malware, Silver Sparrow, and it's apparently infected thousands of Macs silently across, 153 countries, including the US, UK, Canada, France, Germany. That's a huge reach.
It is, and the weird part is researchers still aren't sure exactly how it's spreading or what it's ultimately supposed to do. Once it's on a Mac, it just kind of sits there waiting for commands from a server somewhere, which makes it harder to spot because it's not doing anything obviously malicious right away.
But the really worrying thing is that it's the second type of malware found that can actually infect Macs with Apple's own M1 chip. Given Apple's security reputation, does this M1 stuff mean things are changing for Mac users? Should we maybe rethink how safe Macs really are? This sounds pretty sophisticated, like long-term planning by the attackers.
It definitely suggests that they're specifically targeting these newer chips.
Yeah.
Red Canary, one of the security firms tracking it, called Silver Sparrow a reasonably serious threat.
Okay.
They pointed to its M1 compatibility, how widespread it is, the infection rate, and what they called its operational maturity. Basically, it looks ready to drop some kind of nasty payload whenever the attackers give the word.
And there's no patch right now. The advice is just be careful.
Pretty much. Be more alert. The source mentioned infected ads as one possible way it might be spreading, maybe even zero-click attacks.
Zero-click, meaning you don't even have to click anything to get infected.
Potentially, yeah. That's quite unsettling.
It really is.
And this actually links to another problem the source mentioned, malicious ads exploiting a WebKit bug, a zero-day bug.
WebKit, that's the engine behind Safari, right?
Right.
And zero-day means Apple didn't know about it.
Correct. And this exploit's apparently been active for years since 2020, sending iOS and Mac users to bad websites. What's wild is attackers were apparently buying ad slots to use this vulnerability even earlier, like back in 2018.
Wow. And Apple's fix took a while.
Seems like it. The bug was reported last June, WebKit got a patch in December, but the fix for Safari users only just came out this month.
That's quite a long time for people to be exposed.
It really highlights the challenge, even for huge companies, in plugging every hole quickly. And it just shows these threats are persistent. Even systems we think of as secure are constantly being tested. Vigilance is still key for users.
Absolutely. A good reminder that nothing's 100% bulletproof.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears now to our last topic. This one's pretty unusual. Qatar offering to gift an airplane to the U.S.? Sounds generous, right? On the face of it, yeah. But turning that plane into something that could actually serve as Air Force One, that's incredibly complicated and probably very expensive.
Right.
This whole thing has partly come up because Boeing is way behind schedule delivering the new purpose-built Air Force Ones. They're not expected till 2027 now, at the earliest.
So this gift plane needs a massive refit to meet all the crazy high standards for a presidential aircraft. What kind of changes are we talking about?
Oh, it's a long list.
Yeah.
Security-wise, you're probably looking at armoring the hull, much thicker windows,
Like bulletproof?
and then some, probably. Plus installing defensive systems, chaff rockets against radar missiles, flares for heat-seeking ones, infrared countermeasures. The engines and electrical systems would need hardening too, against EMPs, electromagnetic pulses, and even missile fragments.
Wow. Sounds like something out of a movie. What about communications? That must be top priority for Air Force One. Absolutely critical. It would need secure comm systems, just like the White House. Air to ground, air-to-air, satellite links, and probably at least 2 separate phone systems, inside one open, one totally secure.
Makes sense.
Oh, and a full medical suite needs to be installed too.
Right. It's basically a flying command post and hospital.
Uh,
Now, the source also mentioned something less glamorous but vital.
Yeah.
Looking for bugs.
Yeah.
Actual listening devices.
Exactly. A painstaking search for any hidden passive bugs, the kind that don't transmit until activated, would be essential.
Yeah.
The source even suggested it might actually be cheaper and safer just to rip out and replace all the interior furniture and fittings rather than trying to check every single bit.
That's drastic, but I guess it makes sense given the stakes. Yeah. Okay, the million-dollar question, or maybe $100 million question. What's this all going to cost taxpayers? And how long would it take?
Well, that's where it gets a bit murky. The government hasn't put out clear cost figures, but given everything that needs doing, yeah, you're almost certainly looking at hundreds of millions of dollars.
And the timeline. Also fuzzy. Some estimates say it might not even be ready until 2030.
2030? That's ages away. And wasn't there another wrinkle mentioned? What if this plane, down the line, gets considered for donation to a former president? Did they have to undo all these special mods?
That's another really good point raised. It throws in more logistical and financial questions about what happens long term. It's not explicitly stated they'd have to reverse it, but it definitely adds another layer of complexity.
So this gift plane comes with some pretty hefty strings attached. Hundreds of millions in potential costs, years of work. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? A free plane that ends up costing a fortune and taking forever makes you question the real value.
It certainly does. Sometimes what looks like a gift isn't quite so simple.
So just to quickly wrap up what we've looked at today, we dug into the Take It Down Act, good intentions, but complex reality. We looked at the Silver Sparrow malware, showing threats are always evolving, even for Macs. Right, a persistent threat.
And finally, this whole saga with the gifted aircraft from Qatar, a free plane needing a massive, costly, and lengthy overhaul.
And, our goal here was just to give you a clearer, deeper understanding of these things, cutting through some of the noise without burying you in details.
Exactly. So maybe something to think about as you go. Looking at these 3 things, the new law, the malware threat, the plane situation, which one do you think will actually have the biggest long-term impact? Whether it's on your own digital life or how government operates. Definitely food for thought.
Indeed. It pushes us to think beyond just the headlines, doesn't it? Consider those wider ripples.
Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. We'll catch you next time with more insights from the sources you care about.